Welcome to the Coffee and Turner Syndrome podcast.
where we talk all about Turner syndrome.
I'm Brooke.
I'm Andrea.
Now let's hop
into today's episode.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Coffee and Turner Syndrome podcast.
Hello.
And I'm Brooke.
And I'm Andrea.
It has been a while.
It has been a while.
It's been a little bit again. So
Yeah.
before we jump into any topic, you have any updates you want to share? Things that have been going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, the things you just want to either scream from the mountaintop in a good way or rant about for.
Oh, well. I don't know if I've gotten to mention about Australia.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, both there's a mix there. So I will put that caveat out there. So I did get to go to Australia this year for the international convention that happens every 4 years. And um, so spent 2 weeks out there.
Mhm.
And the first part was for the conference. Um, Spent about a week in Brisbane because that's where the conference was. And then spent about a week in Sydney. And um, the conference, and the culture in Sydney is very interesting. It's very different. And it was a lot of fun. And I think the international committee did do a good job of um organizing it. We had a little petting zoo, things like that to open, the conference with on our first night. So that was kind of fun to get to see some Australian animals. Um, there were some interesting some breakout sessions that I've heard before that, they have those at conference, right? Um, but the thing that I would say that caught my attention was the difference between um how the healthcare system works in Australia as opposed to the American healthcare system that we have.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I learned is now the guidelines are fairly similar as far as treatment.
Hmm.
Um, However, the thing that was kind of interesting and a little bit shocking was found out that if you were to go to a different area, so like if you were in Brisbane, it's a different um I want to say province because I lived in Canada and I'm used to provinces. But they're uh in basically different provinces. Sydney and Brisbane are in different provinces. That may not be exactly what they call it, but my Canadian, that is how I identify it. Um, so Newfoundland, Queensland. Um, so the difference is if you, and this is probably other conditions too, but if you're seeking treatment for Turner syndrome, you have to get treatment in the area in which you live. You cannot seek out treatment in another area outside of your province
Yeah.
because the doctors could be criminally charged. So, for example, like I lived for a while in Alberta,
Hmm.
in Calgary, Alberta, and if I were to go to say Manitoba, I wouldn't be able to go there to get my treatment. Those doctors could be prosecuted. Hmm.
That's
So,
crazy.
people have different feelings on the healthcare system. We definitely do not have a perfect healthcare system. There are definitely things that are
Yeah.
um, broken that could use some fixing and stuff. But it honestly made me really thankful for the healthcare system that we do have because
Yeah.
I have the ability to seek out the medical care and doctors that I want treating me. So I know that, I'm getting a cardiologist that understands my cardiology issues and understands, the impact from my Turner syndrome, that understands Turner syndrome. Um, and so I can seek that out. Now, granted, I didn't have to go very far. I have a great healthcare system here in Kansas City. But when I was a kid, I moved away from Houston because I grew up in Houston before I even wound up in Canada. I grew up in Houston for a while. And so that's where all my doctors were for a long time when I was still under pediatric care. And so we would travel to Houston to do that. And to think that, like, I wouldn't be able to do that, which we know, like, when I was a kid, there was a lot of research and stuff like that going on in Houston through the Texas Medical Center. It's one of the leading medical centers in the United States,
Yeah.
also one of the leading ones for research in Turner syndrome. And I was part of the clinic there, and I was, put on, um, a growth hormone that, um, they had switched. And so I was part of this trial on this new synthetic growth hormone. And um fortunately, um, I had that ability. And but I'm thankful because if I see a doctor and I have to travel a little ways, I'm willing to do that if I know for sure I'm gonna get the best care and they know and understand my TS and are gonna treat me the way that I wanna be treated. Um, I'm willing to do that. We were willing to do that. And to think that a doctor could be charged for treating you if you came from a different area.
Yeah, that part is crazy.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I guess unfortunately, insurance and just a healthcare system is something that having a complex medical scenario, any of them, it makes it really not fun to try to navigate those things.
no,
But you throw in such a niche, not as well known genetic condition that manifests in so many different ways, and it becomes even more complex. Insurance companies don't know what to do with it. I was constantly Thankfully, I can get coverage through Andrew, and so I don't have to worry whether I can qualify on my own. And I think the laws have changed in a way that I think it's made it so I should be able to, but they could still make it more expensive for me.
yeah.
I believe
And
I believe it's in a way that they have to cover me, but they are able to rate me however they see. So I could still end up having to pay more, but they can't deny me coverage. But
yeah,
even still, that could be burdensome depending on how much it costs.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's that. But then just the idea of not being able to, because that's a pretty common thing in the States where, like, everybody knows the idea of traveling to wherever the best doctor is for whatever you're dealing with. You hear lots of stories of people traveling all over the country to find the best doctor for whatever they're dealing with.
yeah,
And whether your insurance covers it or not is one question of it, but you absolutely have the right to do that.
right. And that's the difference because they have a national healthcare system. And, it's one of those things where it might sound good on paper. Oh, we have a national healthcare system. Everybody gets insured. Nobody has to pay. Well, you're paying through your taxes. People
Yeah.
just don't realize that.
Yeah.
And, um, but you don't get the freedom to fully like choose your doctor. You're
Yeah.
limited to what they provide for you. And when you have like something so niche, I know I feel better when I have a doctor that I can seek out that understands Turner syndrome, that understands my medical history because it's not just having Turner syndrome, but we all are affected differently.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes, I mean, we're not cookie cutter. So to get the care that we need, we have that ability. And the insurance system can be difficult and it is a pain. It has definitely been a pain. But I came out more grateful to have the healthcare system that we have here because I do have the ability here to seek out the doctors that I want.
Yeah.
And to be sure I feel comfortable with the doctors that I am entrusting my care to.
Yeah.
And so everybody should be able to have that
Yeah.
for whatever they're dealing with and feel comfortable with that. And that's one of the things I would say that I'm thankful for, that we have the healthcare system that we do. I will deal with insurance any day. It might be a headache, but I will happily deal with them any day with being thankful, knowing that I have good doctors behind me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because how many times do we get put in the scenario where we have to tell the doctor what Turner syndrome is?
Right.
You absolutely should have the right to find a doctor you don't have to explain your genetic condition to. Like,
Right.
those doctors exist and you should have the right to seek them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, that would be very, very. So I was like you growing up. I was very blessed in that within our close areas, we've had top of the line hospitals. I grew up right next to UC Davis in
Mhm.
California.
Excellent hospital.
Amazing, amazing teaching hospital, amazing research hospital. So I was extremely blessed to be able to go there. And my mom really pushed, like, as soon as I turned 12 or 13, I didn't have major complications, but she knew this is going to be the start of a lot of those really important things with Turner syndrome. I'm starting HRT. We're looking at bone density. Like, all of those things start becoming more important. And so it goes into specialties. And she was like, no, I want you at UC Davis for those. And we had the
Mhm.
ability to go there. They were right there. And now where I live, I have Stanford. So I've
Yeah.
been very blessed in that way. But it, that's not a guarantee.
Mhm. Yeah, when I was in Canada, I did not have the team of doctors. I did not have an endocrinologist. I did not have, a primary that I was really working with. Like, obviously, we went to like an ER emergency or something like that if I was dealing with, a sinus infection or whatever.
Yeah.
But when it came to my Turner syndrome related stuff, there was not that availability. Like, they did not have the specialist. And so fortunately, um, because of the um study that I was a part of, there was a lot that was covered. And then
Oh,
there was stuff that was able to be covered through my mom's insurance. So I was still able to go to Houston. So several times a year, we would have to travel from Canada to Houston.
that's really
Um,
far too.
yeah. Mhm. And it was different because I'm also having to get my growth hormone into another country.
Yeah.
And, you know, and to make sure that when I go there, I'm getting everything dealt with because they also have a nationalized healthcare system where I may not get in right away. They don't have the specialists with the knowledge as well as I got in Houston.
Yeah.
And so fortunately though, I could still travel there. And I'm thankful because if I hadn't been able to, like
Oh gosh, yeah.
I, um I would
Yeah,
not,
I wonder
I
if you
you know,
hadn't had that set up, would you have how hard would it have been to have the growth hormones if you hadn't been connected that way? I mean, I can't imagine.
incredibly hard.
Yeah, that must
I
have helped
mean,
get it
they
through
wanted to
custom.
fight. Yeah. I mean, they wanted to, I mean, they did not make it easy at all. And my mom had to go like rounds trying to get things taken care of. But, fortunately, we were able to while we were there. But yeah, it was a challenge. So, that's sort of, why I come from the perspective that I do is because
Yeah. Yeah, you've
I've
seen
seen
both
it.
worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was surprising. I just couldn't imagine, being in the position of a physician that, if they chose to treat a patient but isn't, a resident in that area, that it was actually like punishable.
Yeah, I think ours, it would almost be opposite if you neglected. If you go to an
Yeah.
ER and are turned away, that's, I mean,
Yeah, here it's almost the opposite.
yeah,
If they were to refuse, yeah.
you a doctor could probably, I think they could lose their license if they
Yeah.
were caught turning a patient away, and that's breaking their oath.
Where, yeah, it's the complete opposite. If they, you know, treated that patient, that's when they could, their license and all that could be affected.
Because that would be like
And
if you
and then
showed
there's
up at an ER or an urgent care, same thing, right? They would have to turn you away if you weren't from the area.
probably, yeah, probably. And I can also tell you, like, um, because you mentioned like if you had to, being able to be insured, like maybe on a private insurance or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, these days, where growing up, it was more difficult to get. I mean, I was on my parents' insurance, but if I were to try and get my own insurance, I would not have probably been covered.
Yeah.
Now, when I had lost my job back in 21, um, before I started my job where I'm currently at, and I took on employer health care, I had to get my own personal policy.
Mm.
But I was able to get a policy that covered me, covered the medications that I needed, still covered, I had to go through and ask like which of these plans cover these doctors because I'm like, these are the doctors that I need to be able to have my insurance cover. Um, and so they, tried to get me the plan that would cover the majority of the doctors that I see, so I would still be within network.
Yeah.
And so, I found a policy that was fairly decent. It wasn't terribly expensive. And, the coverage was pretty comparable to what I had previously had with my other employer. And so, and plus like there was a few doctors that were not like part of my primary care that wasn't covered, but as long as my endocrinologist was covered and my cardiologist was covered for the time being, I was good.
Yeah.
And so, I did that, but that was better than what it could have been,
Oh, yeah. Well, and
because there would have been a one point where I probably would not have had the coverage.
yeah. Yeah, I remember when I was younger, because I've always been on an employee benefit of some kind. I've never had to get my own. I went from being on my dad's benefits to when we got married, I was on Andrew's benefits. And um I remember even when I was like, I want to say 11 or 12 even, hearing my parents talk about like, oh gosh, what would we do to get all of Brooke's stuff covered if it ever came to needing to get our own? Because there was a very real question of my parents are going, would an insurance company just deny her? Could we
Mhm.
find other coverage for her if she isn't qualifying through employee benefits? And I think at that time when I was 11 or 12, probably not. The law hadn't
Yeah.
changed yet, and pre-existing conditions were still a very big concern of, like, you could automatically be denied if you had anything they deemed too much liability for them.
Oh, yeah. And I was textbook for that because,
Yeah,
Turner syndrome and being a diabetic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And, when the cardiac issues kind of started coming into play. So, yeah, I was a little bit of an insurance risk. Um,
yeah,
but thankfully, it came at a point when I needed it, because most of the time I didn't have that problem because I went from my parents' insurance to my own insurance when I started working.
yeah,
Yeah, like, employer insurance.
yeah,
And so most of my adult life has been employer insurance. Um, but yeah, I had, you know, probably 2 times in my life where I had to go through unemployment, and the first time I ever had that happen, um, the pre-existing conditions was a thing.
yeah,
So that was the difficult part. Thankfully, I was not needing insulin at that time. Um, but I couldn't get insurance because pre-existing conditions.
yeah,
Um, but this time, the last time in 21, I was able to.
yeah,
So, um, the that made me really thankful. So it was kind of interesting and shocking to hear the differences.
yeah,
And it was a little surprising in that regard. But there were some interesting conversations around mental health, things like that too at the conference. Um so yeah, but it was a very kind of exciting and interesting opportunity. So I'm glad I went.
yeah,
So, yes, it was it was really neat and a lot of fun too to also get to meet some of the TS women from other parts, like in person,
yeah,
from other parts of the world. And so, it was really cool, to get to connect with, some of the TS ladies that ordinarily I wouldn't, get to connect with them in person. So,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's awesome. To get to go to
Mhm.
Australia, that's a
Yes.
pretty good, like, I would love to
Mm,
go see Australia.
yes. Um, it was definitely a bucket list kind of thing, and
Yeah.
I weighed um, the financial part of it, but I'm like, I don't know when I'm gonna get another opportunity,
Oh, yeah.
and I wanna get a chance to experience an international convention, and it really fortunately, it was not as far as financially, surprisingly, as much or as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Um, but I was like, I'm like, I need to do this, you know? And so I'm like, I'm gonna do what I need to try and make this happen and, work it out and figure it out. And yeah, so I mean, I was really excited to get to go. I'm glad that I went, and I recommend, if you get the opportunity, you know, go and experience it. It's very, I mean, it's credible, and even even a convention. I mean, I'm still, a supporter of um getting to go to conventions for the fact that you get to connect with other people in the TS community, other
Yeah.
girls. You
Yeah.
sometimes get the cardiac, like, I didn't that's how I got my discovered my cardiac thing. We've talked about that. Um, was
I
at a convention because I got the echocardiogram.
yeah, I love that story.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yes. Yes. Um, and who knows? I very well could have gone a lot longer not knowing,
Yeah,
um,
which is scary.
which is very scary. Yes. Yeah. And I could have, because, I have a coarctation. I'm at risk with that and high blood pressure, of having a aortic dissection. And um, you know, those are all things that, like, I wouldn't have sought, out. It was in my mind, but no one ever told me, hey, let's really get a good baseline on your heart and make sure that that's. I didn't have any symptoms, so I was just like, I got enough to worry about. Let me not worry about that right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no, I'm good. But when I was at the conference, I was like, I need to do this because how can I turn down a free echocardiogram?
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to take advantage of that. And they're going to tell me everything's fine. Well,
Yeah.
that turned out not to be the case. Um, but, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, sometimes you don't know until it kind of happens. But because I was able to find out, I can be proactive about it
Yeah.
and not be at risk of having an aortic dissection and not knowing until the moment that that's happening. I can,
Yeah.
be proactive and keep an eye on it and try and do something about it before that were to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So important.
that's why I'm an advocate of, taking the opportunity to do those things, and
Yeah.
because that's one of the vital things I think that comes out of conferences is um, catching those things, because early detection is key. We need to
Yeah.
catch these things earlier, which I think will lend us into some of what we're going to dive into a little bit.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm so if there is a national or an international conference that is in London, that would be
Hmm.
like the cherry on top for me because London is definitely a bucket list place for
I
me.
have got to go to London. If they do one in London,
We should go.
go. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, it's so fun.
Yeah.
London is so cool. Um,
I would love to go
I
so
I had
bad.
a lot of fun when I got to go. Um, I went in, high school for, um, high school, like, it was basically a mission trip, but we mostly were like, we just want to go to England. We just want to go to London. So, but we got to see Sheffield and, Stonehenge and, some other things. And just,
Yeah.
we took the channel over to France and went to Paris for a day.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was very cool. So, I hope that they do an international conference in London. I
That
really
would be
hope
so
that they
cool.
do sometime.
If there is, that
That'd
would
be
be the
awesome.
one I'm like, I don't care what I need to do, I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to mention, I also would get to meet like I haven't actually met that many other women in person. I've done a lot of online. There's
Yeah.
been a total of 2 people I've been in the same room with that had it. And
Oh, yeah.
one of them recognized me from my videos and got all excited because she saw me in a movie theater. It was
Yeah.
very
That's
fun.
cool.
It
Uh
was
huh.
very fun. And then the other was somebody that was a family friend that we found out had it.
Oh, okay.
It was random, and it was the daughter of the caregiver for my grandma.
Oh, okay.
My grandma, she had dementia, and
Mhm.
um, so she had a caregiver because, oh gosh, it would have put my grandfather in an early grave to try to keep trying to take care of her by himself because he was the same age as her. So like, it was just taking too much of a toll on him.
Yeah.
So, but she was so sweet. We got so close with her, and we ended up finding out because just in conversations with my mom, she was saying things that sounded similar. And my mom goes, that just sounds so much like Turner syndrome. Like, that sounds so much like Brooke and like Turner syndrome. And I can't remember if my mom mentioned it or she did, but one of them was like, "Have you ever heard of Turner syndrome?" And it was confirmed. She was like, "Yeah, that's what my daughter has." And my mom goes, because this lady had met me. She knew me from taking care of my
Mhm.
grandma. I had been there, you know? And so she knew me by name and knew who I was. And she was like, my mom goes, Brooke has Turner syndrome. And she goes, "No way." And so we ended up, me and my mom went over just to visit and talk with her. And I got to meet her daughter that had it. And
Ah,
that was the very first person I ever got to meet in person that had it. Really, that was the only other
that's really
person I
cool.
had heard of because that was way before I was online, way before. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was that was my very first experience, and that was, I was like, well, I had just gotten my driver's license, so I was like 18.
Okay.
Because the classes you have to take, at least in California, other states do this differently, but in California, when you get your permit at 15, 16, you have to take 3 behind the wheel classes before you can take your license.
Oh, okay.
And they're each like 3 or 400 bucks a pop. They're
That's really
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you need at least one to activate your permit after you get it. So my mom was like, "Okay, I'll make you a deal because it's a lot of money. We'll get you
Yeah.
your permit. We'll get the first one that activates it so you can use it. And then I'll let you drive everywhere we go." Because I hardly went anywhere without her, anyways. And but I can't do the others. So you'll get your license when you're 18. And I was like, okay, okay. And then I ended up getting it when I was 18. So I had just gotten it and I think I had just probably just turned 18.
Oh, okay.
I had never met anybody else before then, or really even heard of anybody. Like, nobody was like, "Oh, hey, my other person I know has it." Nothing, nothing like that at all. That's why I feel like what we do is so important because other people need that experience.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really, um, meet anybody in person, until probably 2010
Okay.
when I actually, for the first time, met other women with Turner syndrome. Which is strange that I hadn't, but, um, I mean, I think there was maybe one time just before that I was, um I think I was getting an oil change or something like that, and this lady happened to kinda look at me and she goes, "By any chance, do you have Turner syndrome?" And I was like,
Wow.
"Wait a minute, how do you know that?" I'm like, I do, as a matter of fact." And, um, that was the first experience where I've kind of come across with somebody in the wild that's like, "Do you have Turner syndrome?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." Um,
You know what that is?
and yeah, she was the first person that I met in person, that had Turner syndrome.
Wow.
Because I hadn't been to a conference or anything, and I didn't meet anybody when I was going to Texas Children's or anything like that. I never came across, anyone else that was doing the study that I was, and, we didn't really have, like, a clinic where I was gonna meet other girls. Um, I think that would have been wonderful, because
Yeah.
I know I wasn't the only one because I was going to a place where, a lot of, TS girls were getting their pediatric care.
Yeah.
But, there just wasn't like a formal clinic or anything like that where you could just go and kind of see all your doctors or whatever. Um, in that way. And I just never ran into anyone else that had it until like this lady was the first person. So, I was, um, probably I think 19
Wow. Yeah.
around that. Um, 19 or 20 when that happened. And so, um, yeah, adulthood.
Yeah.
So, mhm.
Yeah.
So it's really it's interesting. But yeah, I think, I think people deserve to be able to connect with, um, other people that share their condition. Cause like now, cause I know a number of girls in my area, and I feel fortunate to have like a group of women that, we can talk about stuff that we're dealing with
Yeah.
and have, the ability to kind of understand. And I think that's too the great thing now about social media. It kind of bridges some of that,
Yeah.
um, you know, so people can connect online too. But getting to have like a group in person, we try and go out like, once a month, whoever's available, we try and have something where we can get together, go out once a month. Just gives us a chance to kind of like connect. And it's just nice having, friends and a group around that really understand. And you don't have to feel like, "Well, I have to explain, or you don't quite get where I'm coming from."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
They can
yeah,
partially empathize, but not fully
empathize,
understand. Yeah. They
but to really
fully
understand the
understand.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I like it for that. I
Yeah.
like it for that.
Yeah.
So do we wanna get into this
Yeah.
one topic?
The topic.
Yeah.
So, I guess just broad strokes, we want to talk about just some of the gaps we feel like are in some of the, not that what's there is, well, we'll caveat this some, but not that there's not good work being done at all, but that there's things happening within the support systems for Turner syndrome that just are either confusing things, or there's gaps in the care actually needed, and
Mhm.
there's distractions happening instead of focusing on the gaps in the research and the care that's actually needed. And
Yeah.
um so part of that is a post from Turner Syndrome Society of the United States. Um, this is their post in their group, and I don't know what triggered it. I don't know if there was conversations prior to this that triggered it. I have no idea. Um, but I guess I should just read the whole post and then we can talk about it.
Let's start with reading the post, and then we'll go into it.
Okay. So
Okay.
here's their post. TSUS, TSSUS, recognizes that males are being diagnosed with TS. The TS medical experts have tentatively called this diagnosis males with males with 45X, the cell line, or 45X, 46XY. It still stands that the official diagnosis of TS requires that the patient be phenotypical female, meaning they have female sex organs. The reason you don't see medical guidelines and info on the website that says males is because scant little research has been done on males on the 45X cell line. Clinical guidelines come from research. While there are similar medical conditions and physical traits in males with the 45X cell line, it can't be assumed that they are the same when it comes to the nuances of recommended medical treatment. We at TSUS offer support to both females with TS and males with 45X cell line and their families. All are welcome here, and we are only a phone call or email away if anyone has questions. So, my first reaction is just this just feels confusing. The Even in the opening paragraph. So there's been this whole conversation of, can males have Turner syndrome? And this back and forth about it. And there's also the whole intersex conversation, which is a little different, but I guess adjacent to this conversation. Um, This post feels confusing because one, I is this random? Is this out of the blue? Was there something they were responding to? I'm not sure. That may clear up why they said what they did, if there was something specific they were responding to, but I have no idea. But the way they word things is like almost in the post, they go back and forth between inferring males have TS and also trying to acknowledge, but the official definition is phenotypical females with XX chromosomes and female sex organs. It's like they, even in their post, bounce back and forth between the two. And to me, part of what they're saying is, well, the reason we do it is because there's not enough research on this male phenomenon we're seeing. And so they aren't getting support. So we're supporting them too. But they're
Mhm,
lumping it all in together as if it can all be under one umbrella. And to me,
mhm,
that's just not the case. Like that's fine to say we don't want this to be, we want to support these families also, but it should not be where you're mixing the two groups together when even in their post they say it can't be assumed that they are, and this is their wording, it can't be assumed that they are the same when it comes to the nuances of recommended medical treatment because
mhm.
females and males are vastly different in, I mean, in a lot of ways, but specifically my biggest thing I thought of was our hormone systems are completely different.
Yep.
If you look at how our hormone systems function, men are very linear. Their their hormone levels do not massively shift throughout the month. They do like none of that happens with it. It is not this isn't it it's just a fact. It's not as complex of a system as the female system where the hormone levels shift depending on the time of the month. They shift depending on different environmental factors. Like there's a whole lot that happens with the female hormone system that is so different. And sexual
A lot,
development.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sexual development is so different. And so even if you say, well, but it's the same impact, it's this damage to the chromosomes, okay, but how does that damage to those damages are going to impact that system very different than this system because they're two very different systems. So,
Yeah, and I mean, with, um well, multiple levels, but, like, with one specifically, like HRT, when you're talking about HRT therapy,
yeah.
I mean, you can't treat that the same.
No, you would not give a male estrogen.
No. And so, to lump us in and, yeah, they're saying that it sounds like, they're, um, wanting to recognize this particular cell line and say that they're also Turners, but you're talking about a very rare phenomenon in which there's Y material, but females have some level of testosterone,
Yeah.
a lot lower, small amount,
Yeah.
but we do make a small level of testosterone. But I can tell you that, you know, well, okay, let me put it this way. How do you define phenotypical? Because I'm not phenotypically female. I am female. Let me just put it that way. I am 100% female. And I have a 45-46 line. And I have some mosaicism. I thought yes, I was classified, with mosaic turners. But when I had my karyotype done by my current endocrinologist, because I didn't have the original karyotype that was done, Um, that came back, but, and I haven't checked to see, as far as, like, wine material. Um, but yeah, um,
But none of those things have ever made like, there's no it this is why the conversation about intersex has always confused me, because the the singular basis you can even make an argument that Turner syndrome is intersex is because, oh, well, it's non-standard, non-typical chromosomes.
mhm,
Okay, well, then is Down syndrome intersex? Because that's non-standard, non-typical chromosomes as well. In a
mhm,
different way, absolutely, but it's still
but it
non-standard.
it is a chromosomal.
Yeah, it's a chromosomal
Yeah,
disorder also.
yeah,
So it's like it feels like you're grasping at straws to broad strokes say that. And the other flip side of that is, sure, you can make all of those arguments, but what's the connotation being made? The connotation being made is somehow it's sex ambiguous,
mhm,
and it's not.
no,
There has never been. Now, as a person, you can have moments of like, I have trouble feeling like a real woman because my body's not doing what it should. And I've
yeah,
had those moments when all of my friends were getting their periods and I didn't till way later. I had those moments.
yeah,
Fighting infertility. You're mad at your body. Like, this is supposed to be the thing a woman does. Why can I not just do it?
yeah,
Why?
yeah,
And it doesn't feel like your body is functioning as a woman's body should. And
right,
that's true, but there's no sex ambiguity to that.
mm-mm,
You are you're not organ wise ambiguous. You are not function wise ambiguous. None of that is ambiguous. No matter what
no,
stereotypes get thrown, none of that is happening. And if it is, it's a very extreme separate case. It isn't the most common cases for sure. So it just and this whole idea of males being able to have Turner syndrome, I mean, they acknowledge in the post the actual definition is
thought that be female.
female sex. You have to be a female to be diagnosed with it.
And I don't understand how they're in their way trying to say men can have Turners when it is my understanding and my belief from what I've seen is, at least from my karyotype, I can tell you. The damage is usually on the second chromosome. It's on the second X chromosome.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you have anything other than that, like, so if you have a defect and it's a Y chromosome, Noonan's, there is a like male condition, but they're male.
Yeah. Yeah. It's different. It is not
And
it,
they're biologically male.
yeah.
And they may deal with short stature, they may deal with, testosterone issues. They might have some similar issues because it is also chromosomal issues or the chromosomal defect, but they're still biologically male
Yeah. And they're
and
impacted in how a male
male body
body
react.
would
Male
be
body is.
to those
Yeah.
damages.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's so when you look up the definition, it doesn't just say females. Like it specifically says the second X. Well, men don't have a second X.
You can't.
That's not a thing. So it isn't the same.
If you and most often you're going to get the two other results you're going to get is if you don't have the second X and you just have one X. Most of those situations are ones that are not compatible with life.
Oh, yeah, I would expect a male that had a X completely missing would be less compatible with life than even a female with the second X
Uh,
missing,
yeah.
would
Well,
be
they
my
need the
expectation.
yeah. I mean, they need the X. And, um I know there's cases where you have the 45X, and so, you have a cell lines that don't have the X chromosome, and it just depends on how many of those cell lines are affected. But most of the, um, problems that come about during, pregnancy, if you're carrying a child, and why why the rate is so high, the miscarriage rate is so high is, in the situations where you just have the singular X and most of those cell lines are affected by that, that is going to make it very difficult
Yeah.
to survive that. And that isn't compatible with life. The other option is you have a Y and you're a male.
Yeah, and I think some of the confusion comes from there's karyotypes people get that do have a little bit of Y material,
The Y material. And that's different from
having a whole Y chromosome,
exactly.
but also, again, looking at the whole overall picture, there's no sexual ambiguity.
No.
None of that.
Mm-mm,
That Y material being there has not equated to ambiguity in the sex organs.
mm-mm.
None of that has equated to that. So it's I understand seeing a need that looks similar to Turner syndrome that you're already serving and wanting to do that. But I think doing it in this way is very confusing.
Yeah.
And I think what I would like to see is more clarity in that, more clear communications about those types of things. Have separate groups for that specific line. Have specific communication that is clear and direct and not confusing, not mingling the two when you are in your post saying, yeah, you can't assume these are the same.
Right.
But we're
Well,
just trying to also support this community. That's doing that in a confusing way. And at the same time that those things are being done, there's massive research needed for care with actual Turner syndrome patients.
yeah.
I mean, me and you have talked a lot about this. We don't know there's not enough research on later life for Turners.
No. And long-term use of HRT.
Yes. And as somebody in my family, I have a major like HRT specifically connected breast cancer risk.
Mhm.
That concerns me. That has always been
Yeah,
like since I was like 12 when I started HRT. Since that first day, me and my mom and the doctor had conversations about it because I have that family risk. So that is
yeah.
something I'm very passionate about and interested in getting more research on because I want to know what more risk that puts me at.
And there is a risk, with hormone replacement
Mhm.
for cancer.
Yeah,
And so when we do that, I mean, it's needed, but at the same time, long-term use, it puts us at that risk.
yeah,
And with, a family history, then that elevates that risk even more.
yeah,
And, that's one of the things that there's not enough that is not enough research. And I think instead of worrying about trying to put put square peg in a round hole, trying to make something fit, like, the quit making fetch happen sort of thing. Um, trying to make this, you know, like thing that doesn't really fit in this other, and convolute it. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help, um, being able to understand medical care,
Yeah.
you know, and we already deal with enough of doctors that don't have familiarity anyway with
Yeah.
churners. And then I personally don't appreciate being lumped into, something that's very minimal. And I have not known anybody that's had this white material that has not been biologically female just because they have traces of this Y material. Having the Y material just means you have a chromosome, because the chromosome, like, because what happens with chromosomes is when in the cell line, especially with Turner's, when the chromosomes are turning on basically, and when you have a female and it's supposed to turn to an X, so I think it starts as a Y and it's supposed to, when you have a female, changes to an X. And if the chromosome's broken and it doesn't switch, you have Y material. You don't have a Y chromosome. You have a Y material from a chromosome that was broken,
Yeah.
because it was supposed to, the DNA in the cell line becomes an X. It's supposed to turn into an X when you have a female. So in some of those lines, if it doesn't switch, it's like you know, like flipping a light switch. Like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to be female. Let me flip. You have a chromosome that's supposed to be that isn't working, and it's like dormant. It's just material from something that didn't happen. So it,
Yeah.
it didn't become a Y and it didn't become an X. It was supposed to become an X because we're meant to be biologically female. I was given two X chromosomes from my parents.
Yeah.
I just have a very genetic bad luck, and I have a chromosome that doesn't work. but but no, like, we were discussing it, it comes on the second X.
Yeah.
So I inherited the second X chromosome from my biological dad, and some of those X's are missing, and some of mine have parts missing.
Yeah. I always think
Like, if it's
about,
broken, it's like I have 2 X chromosomes there, but it's broken.
yeah. I always think about, and something you said a little bit ago reminded me of it. When I always think about the conference session by, I think, a geneticist or something. It was some doctor that was specifically talking about mosaicism. And she made the statement she believed every person alive with Turner syndrome was mosaic to some extent, just to actually have survived.
Yep. We have to have
Because,
some level of mosaicism, and
yeah,
I think that that's probably true.
because if you
I'm not saying
had a total and complete deletion, it just wouldn't even be. That's probably
that's where I'm saying it's not
the miss.
compatible with life.
Yeah, that's probably the miscarriages that happen that they don't even make it that far.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier, yeah, exactly. So, when more of those are just missing and you don't have, mosaic lines, then yeah, that's where you're gonna see more of the miscarriages in those. And those are
Yeah.
probably the ones that do get miscarried. Um,
The other crazy
because
part is, depending on where you test, I've heard it can test differently.
yeah,
Like, which I think goes along with that, like, that would make sense because, like, if my blood tests classic, where they're seeing the majority of it being deletion rather than damage, but, like, my hair would test mosaic or something?
So what can happen is, so like I originally had my karyotype done when I was um probably about 3, almost 4 years old. And um then I had it redone probably 2017, 2016, 2017, when I started going regularly to the endocrinologist that I see now. And um I had him go ahead and redo my karyotype because I didn't have any kind of records. The thing when that happens is it's a blood draw. So, you know, it can vary when they go to analyze it, how much they were able to capture. So you get your sample, and depending on, you know, depending on it, you may have some that show more mosaicism.
Yeah,
Like I could get a new karyotype done, and they just happen to, out of that sample, when they go to, you know, look at my DNA, what they captured may show more lines of mosaicism, and you might see more lines with two X chromosomes in it. I happen to think that, so I was told that I was mosaic, like I mentioned. When I got my karyotype done at that time, it was a 45X.
so deletion.
So deletion.
Yeah,
Exactly. And that's when he mentioned the Y material, that there's a possibility because of my cell line, I could have some Y material. But I think that's a form of deletion too. Like I said, I think that those were chromosomes that did not turn on and become an X chromosome.
yeah,
And it's just material that's now, it's just, it's DNA material that's just floating. It's nothing. It's not a Y chromosome, it's not an X chromosome. Um, because you're given that and then it switches. So like when you get your chromosomes from your parents, if you're supposed to be a female, which is what I was supposed to be, that initially you get a Y, and if you're a male, it stays a Y and becomes a Y chromosome. When you become a female, it switches and becomes an X chromosome.
yeah,
So when you get both those chromosomes and your chromosomes are doing their thing, and they're all kind of turning on and developing or whatever, it's supposed to be an X. So when it so during, whatever, however you call the process of like when your chromosomes are developing,
mhm,
um and those deletions and all that occur when you have those sex chromosomes and they don't switch, it's like a form of deletion. You have an X chromosome, and you have a line that doesn't have another chromosome. Yeah, you might have Y material, but that's just something that should have been a chromosome that never was.
yeah. That I mean, that does kinda line up with everything else I've heard. I think, to be honest, my biggest concern is getting getting into the weeds of, well, technically, somebody with these chromosomes could have Turner syndrome, and, like, all of those little things, it's like that's such a distraction from what your mission was supposed to be, which is to support Turner syndrome patients,
Yeah,
which, as of right now, are women and girls with Turner syndrome.
yeah. And Turner syndrome has been defined since the 40s. And why are we trying to reinvent the genetic wheel?
Well, yeah, it's just like that there has none of those things, like, no argument I've seen for the genetic side of things has done anything to say the science has actually changed in that way. Sure, there's more detailed understanding of karyotypes. We probably have way more detail in a karyotype than they had initially diagnosing this.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. But why are we using that to blur the science and stuff that was already there? Because while we have more details, there's basic levels of genetics that haven't changed and that aren't going to change.
Yeah.
And sex chromosomes are sex chromosomes. And yes, there's technology and more information available than at the time. But are we going back and saying anything that was like, are we invalidating what Dr. Turner discovered when he was researching Turner syndrome patients? Because, I mean, while yes, there's complexities to genetics, there's also some basic, pretty simple facts.
Well, yeah, and I think as they say in the post, it that's a whole different like, I understand it probably sounds similar, but there's a whole different category of things that would be that is not the same thing as the occurrence in a female.
Right.
This is not something that would cross sexes and look the same.
Yeah.
Down syndrome actually is one that I think, while it happens more commonly, I might be wrong. I haven't researched that in depthly into Down syndrome, but I believe it happens more commonly in males than females. I think it's
Hmm.
more common in males than females. Not it doesn't happen in both, but it's more common in males.
Yeah.
But also there is not the level of variety. Like the symptoms with Down syndrome are pretty set.
Hmm.
You don't like you get levels of severity. You don't
Yeah.
get a crapshoot of let's see what symptoms you're gonna get today.
Yeah.
Like you get with Turner syndrome, where it's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, let's see how you do in this lottery of possibilities."
Right.
It's different,
Yeah.
but that is one that, like, Down syndrome, you could say when it does occur in both, it's pretty even across the board. They're 2 different
And
things.
with that, you're talking about as because, the chromosome where it's impacted, it could be different on different parts of the chromosome. Like
Yeah,
you can have, anything from a full deletion to like part of a deletion. And it could be at the top part of the secondary X chromosome. It could be in the middle, like it can be broken somewhere on that chromosome,
mhm,
variety of places. And based off of where that's broken and how many of those cells are like that, that's what makes it different
yeah,
as far as like the health things that we deal with because, you know, um, because it depends on those factors
yeah,
where there's not as much of that when you're talking about the chromosomes being affected in like a Down syndrome patient.
right. Yeah,
Um,
it's impacted in the same way every time.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are, some levels of um I guess severity. I guess I would just say severity.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Um,
what other I
but
don't know what other word to use to describe what I
yeah.
mean, but levels of severity kind of
Right.
is the best picture I can give of
Yeah.
what I'm thinking, like, whether it's are severely impacted or less severely impacted, but it's the same
Yeah.
symptoms each time.
Yeah. But you kind of have a general idea of the issues
Yeah,
that you're dealing with.
yeah,
There's more knowledge.
Yeah.
and more research done for Down syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the fun with Turner syndrome is, how is this cell broken? And
Yeah.
then what does that cell go become?
Yep.
Does that cell become a heart cell? And so you have heart
Yep.
problems? Does that cell become a kidney cell? So you have a, I think it's horseshoe shaped kidney? Does that
Mhm.
cell become reproductive organs? So you're infertile, they don't develop? And that's the level of detail that is going to change when you're talking about that impact on a male system versus a female system.
And
I have
I
no
would
problem with support for both scenarios, but you cannot call them the same group.
no, no.
It is not the same. And I think the biggest concern for me with that is confusing medical information
Yeah.
and confusing messaging and resources.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest and say, trying to indicate that I'm somehow, ambiguous in my sex, I don't appreciate that. Like, I don't. And I don't like that information. That's part of the misinformation. Lumping me into somehow, uh, being male. Because I can absolutely tell you with 100% certainty, I am fully female.
Yeah.
No ambiguity, questions, doubts about it. Like, I am female. Um, you know, I get people feel like kind of between, both genders, or one day may feel more female than the other, but I am 100% female. I mean, I grew up around um boys. I had, you know, um my biological brother, but I also had three adopted brothers. Um and I was the only female. So I grew up around boys, right? And so I have a side that is a little bit tomboyish, and understand guys sometimes better than females, and am able to interact and be around guys sometimes easier than females. Um, but I'm also like, you know, a girl that likes to, do makeup. I've done beauty pageants, things like that. I'm definitely a girl, and even when I'm doing tomboy stuff and when I'm hanging out with the guys, I am going to be 100% all the time female.
Yeah, those
Just
things.
because, if I'm like somebody is being a tomboy, I mean, that doesn't change my gender.
No.
I was born female. So, um, but I'm speaking for myself, but I'll just say that. I don't know the benefit of lumping that into um Turner syndrome, because one, the whole Y material thing is probably rare anyway, and it's a very different, I think, scenario than um, Turner's. And so I think it's so muddied, and I think it's confusing. And I think, you know, I do think time and energy and money would be better used in trying to advance medical care for things like cardiac, for things like hormone replacement, understanding those things. Things like, yes, understanding the impact of what health issues you might have depending based off of where the chromosome is broken.
Oh, yeah, getting more understanding of the genetics impact could be
Yeah,
huge for knowing. I mean, they could get down to the nitty-gritty, I'm sure, with the technology we have now to make connections, if time and energy and resources are put towards it, to look at, okay, this part is associated with this. We see a pattern where this part is broken and those things are impacted. So they
yeah,
could maybe even start looking at a karyotype from a baby and going, okay, she's going to have, or we need to specifically keep an eye on these issues that we think this is going to impact her in this way.
yeah.
The other side
I
of that
think
is,
those things are valuable.
yes, that furthers care for the Turner syndrome community.
Yeah.
And things like older care,
Mhm.
there's a cutoff very young where it's like, okay, we got you through puberty. Have fun.
Yeah. Have fun, good luck.
Yeah. And it's like, that's not, I didn't die then. This isn't the end of my life. I still have to live the rest of my life
Yeah.
figuring out what to
And
do.
I think, you know, we need the support and organizations that actually champion those things,
Yeah.
because you're going to have a group of women who, you know, what do we do when we get older as well?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because those health things do change,
Yeah.
you know, because there was a long time where, you know, I didn't have to worry about cardiac stuff. Well, you know, that changed
Yeah.
very dramatically last year for me. Where I'm going to be dealing with that my whole, you know, rest of my life. But, you know, however our needs gonna what are our needs gonna be, um, you know, as older adults when we start to age.
Yeah.
Because I know TS women that are, you know, 50s, 60s, you know, I would like to see us be able to have a longer lifespan. We don't know anything about that.
Yeah. And without research, we don't know, okay, what do we need to, at the least, what do we need to screen for?
Yeah.
Do we need more continuous bone density scans after a certain age because you're, increasingly more at risk as you get older, your bone density gets lower anyways, and we start off with a bad place to start with that already. I know
Mhm.
I do, at least. That's a part that I've been impacted, is my bone density and bone strength and all of that. And so I know that's going to be something I need to watch out for as I get older, because that's only
Yeah.
going to get worse.
Yeah. And I definitely do too. Like, 'cause, you know, I'm getting those conversations now, um, where I have to start watching that. You know, they're watching my calcium, they're watching my bone density because I last year, you know, towards the end of last year decided, you know, well, since I had a heart attack and I met my deductible because a week stay at Club KU Med, will do that for you. Um, I met my deductible. I'm like, let me get all my scans because at that point everything will be covered, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
let me get whatever I need done before the end of the year. Um, because it had been a minute. And so I'm like, let's just get it done. So
Yeah.
that was one of the things that I'm like, I need to do. It's been a probably a couple of years since I had my last bone density. Well, um, you know, that's one of the ones I should be doing regularly because especially in like my left hip, deal with problems already. And I have uh osteopenia. So I already have low bone density in there. And especially as we get older, that's gonna affect brittle bones, you
Yeah.
know, breaking bones, things like that.
Yeah, it can start
Um,
to get serious.
yeah, I can start to get serious. Um, so you know, I mean, those are important. And, you know, the thing too, and trying to get, you know, to be able to have a longer, healthier lifespan too is going to be the cardiac. as well. Like, we
Yeah.
really need to get a grasp on that. And, yeah, we know a lot more, but I mean, I, there's a lot of, you know, I've heard too many cases of TS women in their 30s, 40s, 50s passing away um because of cardiac issues. And
Yeah.
I'd like to see us be able to have some longevity, especially the TS girls, myself included, that do have cardiac issues, to be able to get into older age. You
Yeah.
know, um, like to think, hopefully, I might even be able to, like me personally, live a little bit longer than my mom. My mom had just turned, like, was just about to turn 70 when she passed. It was like just before her birthday. And, you know, I think that that's young.
That is, yeah.
And, unfortunately, she had dementia. And that's another thing that I have to think about too, because I'm also diabetic. And there's correlation, I think, between diabetes too
Oh,
and
really?
onset of dementia. Hmm.
I never heard that.
Yeah. Yep.
See, the dementia in my family have all been connected to strokes.
Hmm. I think
Um,
that was my grandparents'
except for
case because,
one scenario where it was Alzheimer's,
hmm,
but the rest that I have heard of, it was strokes that had caused the dementia. But it's absolutely something so on my mind. Um, like I'm trying to keep myself reading. I'm trying to like I do Duolingo and I like challenge my brain with I want to become fluent in Spanish. I love Spanish, so like that's a good
hmm,
challenge. So I'm trying to do things like that. And it just I mean, Turner syndrome is already complex enough and then you overlap it with what your already existing medical family history is, which
hmm,
a lot of mine just doubles up on everything.
yeah,
So it's like I want to know what should I be focusing on for some of these things.
yeah,
And
yeah. And
and
I think too, it would not hurt, you know, um, for part of that research to involve things like that because, you know, I think it's somewhere maybe around 30% of TS females develop onset of diabetes.
Mhm.
It's very easy for, um,
Well, it's
well, and
hormones.
here's why, because and there's a correlation, and I don't think enough people have been talking about that. I don't think enough people have been looking at this. And I'm going to say this as a type 2 diabetic, because a lot of people fat shame or will make type 2 about being fat, and it's a dietary thing. Oh, it's not. It is sort of a metabolic response, which is the difference between type 1 and type 2. Um, but the reason why I'm type 2 is, one, because type 1 is an autoimmune where your body just starts attacking the cells. Type 2 is a metabolic response, not because just of diet, but because I have Turner syndrome, and Turner syndrome, in my case, one of the ways it can onset is because TS is an endocrine disorder. It affects the endocrine system.
Yeah.
It created insulin resistance. Now, yes, there's other factors that can contribute, which sometimes does involve how you eat, but mostly there's other factors because there's a lot of people that can eat a hamburger and not become diabetic. I mean, there's a lot of people that can eat something that's not exactly good for you or eat a lot of sugar or a lot of carbs and not
Oh
become
yeah.
diabetic, you
Yeah.
know?
And then there's a
People,
lot of people that eat the cleanest ever and then
yeah,
are dead 3 months after a cancer diagnosis.
yes, yes. So, um, there's this misconception with diabetes, especially type 2, where it's because, oh, you ate too much fatty stuff, you ate too much sugary stuff, you ate too much carbs. I ate a pizza one day and that was it. I ate the pizza, my body couldn't take it anymore, said, "Congratulations, you're now diabetic."
Mm.
No. Um, yes, you can help manage it by limiting your carbs and sugar, but it doesn't really, you're still diabetic.
Yeah.
Um, but because my, endocrine system is already affected by Turner's, it created insulin resistance. So as a young adult, when I was when I was probably 17 or 18 years old, I started exhibiting signs of insulin resistance. Nobody started somebody like what they're basically saying for me was I'm not eating right and I'm too fat. I was not eating well. I will I will say that. But uh that wasn't just contributing to the insulin resistance. I fully became insulin resistant when I was in college, where they started, talking about me being pre-diabetic. And my A1C was elevating and stuff. I get done with college, and then once I finally get into my endocrinologist, um, that I see now, once I found him, he diagnosed me officially as a type 2 diabetic. Um, and that's when he started me like on oral medication, which starts with usually taking metformin. Um, and then, trying to manage through diet and exercise. So for a while, the metformin was helping, and then I was learning, how to try and figure out how to balance my carbs and stuff like that. Start eating healthier. I started Taekwondo, um, and lost about almost 50 pounds. I was still diabetic, and my insulin resistance increased. And my A1C got so high that he was like, okay, well, we have to add on additional medication. So he added on some additional medication. Well, in the last year and a half, it went from that to, yeah, you need some insulin because it's a degenerative process that can happen. So even though I managed, and I've probably been diabetic for 20 years and managed, that long without needing insulin.
Mhm.
But at some point, the insulin resistance, like you have to be really tight and, not have too much sugar and all that. And make sure that you're balancing it with, oh, I'm active. Well, okay. But eventually your pancreas is going to start wearing down.
Yeah, it sounds like
It
you were doing all of
happens.
those things already and it
Yeah.
still continued to get worse.
y- Yeah. So that's what happened. My pancreas started wearing down. It was not making sufficient insulin.
Yeah.
It makes insulin, but not sufficient. Whereas it completely at some point will kill a type one's um pancreas completely almost. So that's the difference. But the fact is it's still a process that, affects the pancreas and it over time will deteriorate. That happened to my mom. So I had kind of this family history that came into it, plus yes. So it was sort of inevitable. Um, but I've met a number of TS people who are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. And one of them that I know is a diabetic is one of my friends who has TS that lives in this area too. Um, and so, um, but in order to try and stay healthy, and I would like to not, if I can do anything about it, um, have Alzheimer's. I've seen what it does. It's
Yeah.
horrible. But I really think that it affects the brain, and a lot of it has to do with the sugar, because brains are like they thrive off of sugar. Um, but the buildup of sugar can cause, I think, the development of like the calcium deposits or that happens that
Yeah, that they see in
starts in the
scans
brain.
for Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, because of the overabundance of sugar from having diabetes. So
Mhm.
if you have out of control diabetes, um, I think that's when you over a sustained period, it can have an impact on you. And I think there is a correlation from what I can tell from what I've seen. And those are all things that are important. Those are, you know, things that are important to like when you're looking at trying to be able to age and have Turner syndrome.
Yeah.
Um, and understand risk for things like that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot when it comes to that kind of research.
Yeah, there's so much gap in research right now that this kind of thing just feels
It's a
like a
distraction, like
distraction.
you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just feels like, "Okay, let's get back to the point."
Mhm.
This is not only confusing for everybody and just causing confusion and confusing medical information, but it's also a distraction from the whole point.
Exactly.
It is, I mean, they are not a Turner syndrome and some other genetic conditions society. They are
Yep.
a Turner syndrome society.
Yep.
And with the level of need still, just why? Like, it just feels like, okay, let's focus.
Yeah.
You have a lot of good resources, you have a lot of good avenues you could use. So let's focus on that
Yeah.
instead of all of this confusing messaging that then just riles people up in the comments.
Yep.
It's not helpful.
No.
It's
No.
not actually serving the community they're supposed to be serving.
Yeah. And it causes mistrust. It causes because, if when you're a small community and you're talking about a society with a lot of resources at their tips
Mhm.
and they're putting this kind of stuff out there in such a way too that's also very confusing, um and I think really does not do much to advance anything,
Yeah,
any understanding, any kind of thing supporting Turner syndrome. um it feels um like that's just such a minutia kind of a thing that provides no good impact
yeah,
into being helpful for people who are dealing with Turner syndrome. And ultimately, at the end of the day, doesn't really change much in what Turner syndrome actually is.
yeah. Because they say in their post, the technical term is still this.
Yeah. Because no one else that I know of, like I was saying, and I could be wrong, but I haven't seen from other support societies with Turners or from NIH or other places that also define, define Turners in the same way.
Yeah.
I have not seen that change. I've heard for a little while, the conversation about, the intersex and things like that. And I've heard the conversation a little while about the Y material, but to define that males can have Turner syndrome, that's I've not seen anything
No.
to substantiate that coming from sources that I would that I would come across.
Well, and even in the post, it's almost like a back and forth of
But they still had to, because of that, I think, that's why they caveated it with the phenotypical, because they still had to put that in there,
yeah. Yeah,
because
because they
really
have
at the end
to
of the day,
acknowledge the actual definition of Turner syndrome.
yeah.
And throughout the post, they acknowledge this is not the standard definition of Turner syndrome. This is and it almost feels like they're explaining it like they're trying to say, look, we've seen a similar phenomenon happening that we're trying to support as well. But instead of being clear in that messaging of these are two separate things, but we're trying to support them as well because they don't have any resources and they look similar.
Mhm. And
They
that's a
do it in a
completely
very
different conversation.
yes. They are putting very confusing messaging in that instead of being clear. Instead
Mhm.
of being direct with, okay, this is something else happening that we're working on supporting as well. I do think there's a clearer, less confusing way to do that. But I also think like there's so much ground to make for Turner syndrome as well. And they're the Turner Syndrome Society. So
Yeah.
like let's refocus.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that is just become a big giant distraction, like you said.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's all that it serves as, and it takes away from more important work.
yeah,
And, you know, using resources or whatever to try and support, you know, maybe the needs of, you know, um, a group of people that might have this is one thing. But to just kind of in the way and in the confusing way that they're talking about it and going about it, and lumping it in as this is Turner's, and that now you're saying males can have Turners. That just that's where I have the problem.
yeah. I don't think it's not constructive.
No.
And
I mean, research, medical needs, things like that, putting resources you know, to that. Yes, I know it's a phenomenon. Yes, I know, um, you know, with more understanding of genetics, you do have those cases where, you know, yes, you're gonna have somebody that has that marker that has Y material, but I don't know what that like what that serves to you know, to just lump it all together. Um,
yeah.
and call it
Well,
Turner's. I just
and there was this statement, the part that said, clinical guidelines come from research.
mhm,
And well, yes, our our research isn't done. Like
yeah,
that almost feels to me like a inference that, well, Turner syndrome is so much more widely known and da da da, da, which possibly is true when compared to this other thing, but you could not say Turner syndrome is widely known and we have reached what we needed to when it comes to awareness or research. There are
mm-mm,
doctors that still don't know what Turner syndrome is. That should be the focus.
yep,
If that is still
mhm,
happening, you are not done with awareness and research for Turner
yeah,
syndrome. You have not
and
gotten to a point where you're like, "Okay, we've reached what we need. Let's help somebody else." No, we haven't gotten there yet.
and like you pointed out, and like with the guidelines, I would think that that would need different guidelines.
Yes, and they
Sometimes maybe a different approach, different treatment,
Yeah.
because one, like example, like you were talking about hormones and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
And they acknowledge that. That's why it's such confusing messaging to me because there's this inference of them saying males are being diagnosed with Turner's, and then they're saying, but we understand it can't be assumed that they are the same when it comes to the nuances of recommended medical treatments, even though there are similar medical conditions and physical traits happening in males. Well,
mhm,
there's an acknowledgement that it's not the same.
yeah.
And
So really,
lumping
what are
them
they trying to
together
say?
doesn't
Like
help
this thing
either
is
group.
happening in males, but no, you still like it's still considered. You would for Turners have to be phenotypically female, but
Yeah,
yeah, we've seen this happening in males too. Like
yeah. Well,
it,
and
it's double sided, and it's just it's confusing, and I'm just like, "Oh,
what does this
what's the point?
accomplish?
What does this accomplish?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
because this doesn't help either group.
No.
The
No.
males with the 45X cell line are not
Yeah.
getting the help they need by being lumped in with a group of females with a very specific condition.
Right.
That is not helpful for either group because you're not getting the research you need for either group in that scenario when you're lumping them all together. So
That's true.
it's yeah. And with everything I've been seeing and thinking of with so much better support needed for Turner syndrome, it's like there's so much work to be done for Turner syndrome. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
It just feels very
And I feel that being as a distraction, it only sets things back,
yeah.
you know. Um,
So I just yeah, I would rather them be putting the resources and time and energy into Turner syndrome.
yeah.
Um, and and that's not to say that those boys don't need help also, but it doesn't
But
help.
Turner syndrome is in their name. That
Yes.
is
Well, and it
what
doesn't
they're
help the
also there
boys
for.
to be lumped in with girls with Turner syndrome. It doesn't
Yeah.
help them to do that when they're not going to get the actual help they need if it can't be focused on what they actually need.
Yeah.
So it does,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just not helpful for anyone. And I think
Yeah.
missing the point of what was supposed to be being done. So
Yeah.
it's concerning.
It is very concerning. Yeah.
I think, I think some of the work being done gets not paid attention to. Like some of the good work being done to meet those gaps, to bring awareness to like all of those things being done gets not paid attention to when this whole
No.
distracting conversation is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Well, I feel better that we had this conversation.
Yes, I think, and it's not to say that good things aren't being done at all. I just
Right.
think, especially because this conversation has been happening more and more, we need to acknowledge that this is not constructive.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, because it's not, and it takes away, I feel like, from good work that is being done because it is a distraction. And then people are kind of looking over, on one side going, oh, here's this conversation about, you know, oh, males having Turner syndrome
Yeah.
and, what important research is happening. And it takes away.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we could do better. That's my whole thing with this is I think we could do better. I want to see, um, see those that are supposed to be supporting women with Turner syndrome, do better in helping. I mean, because yes, there's a lot of good, but yeah, I think we could do better by avoiding things like this, you know, and taking away from what's happening because that's not what the conversation's going to be.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It just becomes this whole heightened emotions conversation rather than paying attention to the needs of the community more directly.
Y- Yeah.
And so I think what I'm going to continue doing is supporting the work that I see that fills those gaps, trying to help start some of that work as much as I can. And I, I'm going to stay focused.
Yep.
And that's all I can do. That's all we can do.
Yep.
So I hope that's what we
Yep.
do with this podcast is kind of stay
Yeah.
focused on the needs of the community.
Yes. Absolutely.
And
So
sometimes the need
I
is a rant conversation, and that's okay
yeah.
too.
Yes. Well, I have a feeling that, we're not the only ones that are feeling this and
Yeah.
talking about this. So I think it's a good conversation to have and it has been a big thing in our community. And so I think it's important to address it. I think it's important to have a conversation about this and share some of what we're seeing and some of, like the concern with the gaps that we feel like that are being missed because of it. And,
Yeah.
um, we just want better. And, um, you know, I'm curious though to hear what other people are thinking about this and what they've heard. And yeah, I'm really curious to hear um what people's thoughts are around this
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to hear.
conversation.
Yeah. I would love to hear thoughts. And if you have any questions, if you have any topic suggestions, let us know.
Hmm.
And we'll just keep having these conversations. I think there's so much conversation to still be had. I mean, so much. And so join us. Come back and
Yes,
stay tuned.
yes. There will be plenty more, I'm
Yes.
sure. But yes, if there is something that you would like to talk about, let us know. Or if you have a question, let us know. We'll be happy to do our best to answer those and talk about things that are important to you and what's going on around you and in our um, Turner syndrome community. But hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation and definitely feel free to chime in with your thoughts. Um, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yes. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
The Coffee and Turner Syndrome podcast is a Butterfly Entertainment production. You can keep up with the Coffee and Turner Syndrome podcast on Instagram at Coffee and Turner Syndrome podcast. You can keep up with all of Butterfly Entertainment's podcasts, YouTube videos, films, and other projects on our Instagram page. We are at Butterfly Entertainment Group. Thanks for listening.